discussion. So the first topic for today is compile feedback for Rep 2004-2005. Kyle and Michael, do you want to discuss?
Mikhail, you wanna take that one? You got the rest of them anyway.
Yeah, that's fine. Like, go ahead. I think my name is pretty present.
Yeah. All right. Fine. So we talked about this at the last meeting. Let's say what 2004 is the quality categories. 2005 is the standard library. Both of them impact the VDP stuff that we're doing. The 2000 both of them on the scoping side, as well as the 2004 on the deadline. So if you recall, we said that we would, like, the deadline we gave people to start publicly discussing what they disclosed was 90 days. And what we used to determine that was, well, we know that at the outset it would take 60 days to actually ship a fix from actually having it to having it in people's hands. And we know we can play with that a little bit, but that's kind of the standard. And so if we take an additional 30 days to fix, then that gives us a 90. And so that 30-day fix, though, isn't just us or the vulnerability handling group or Open Robotics, right? It actually ends up going down to the individual package maintainers. And so we wanted to make sure that we as a working group looked at both of these from a security perspective. Really, everyone's going to turn the camera off? Okay, fine. I'm not going to have this video just be me. Anyway, no, now it can just be Joe. Anyway, so we wanted to give that feedback in terms of a working group, which is why we started a document to actually sort of gather this feedback and then we can provide it in one go. And we wanted to do that, today, maybe tomorrow. So we wanted to take just one more chance to sync and make sure everybody was up to speed on this. There were, I think a lot of us added our feedback to this document already. But one thing I wanted to talk about in particular was that deadline to fix. So in Rep 2004, I think they were rightfully choosy about what would go into level 1. And as a result, level 2 is full of really useful stuff that I think most robots will probably use. I think it makes sense to have vulnerability deadlines and actually allow people to report vulnerabilities against at least both level 1 and 2. But I wonder if we can degrade expectations a little bit for level 1. But then that impacts the VDP as well, because we said 90 days. But if we give them longer than 30 days to fix, then we actually need to push that out a little bit. So there are some things to discuss here. Any thoughts? Or shall we just sort of continue in this document and clean it up and ship it at the end of, let's just say like tomorrow?
I thought the report card kind of makes sense. Like, you have these orthogonal axes of quality that might not easily be summed up into a single score. So kind of being more precise on what are the strengths and weaknesses of a particular package and its maintainership might be helpful to express to the user.
Although, and that was kind of another piece of feedback. I agree. It is pretty. It's not very fine grained, right? But even leaving it fine grained, it's not clear how a user actually consumes this, and making it even more granular will make it even harder to consume the quality level. At least with just a couple of levels, you could feasibly implement something like, Ubuntu's repository components. But if you make it more granular, right, that sort of possibility quickly disappears. That's really my only concern with that.
Oh, you're saying having those kind of discrete units so that it can be chunked into like you said, Ubuntu.
Right, exactly. If you have a couple of clear buckets, then that's something you can do. But if you actually have a report card, it's a lot harder.
My concern with having only a few buckets, as you say, that within the same bucket, you will end up with very different qualities of
yeah.
And as I was stating in my comment, maybe a package is excellent in all metrics, but completely suck at one, and then he ends up in a low-level bucket, and that could, discourage its use, or it doesn't reflect properly its actual quality, and lacks of whatever it is lacking of.
Have you? How would a user? Sorry, go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, sorry. So my idea with this comment was that rather than increasing the number of buckets, we keep the proposed 4 buckets, but we have another side metric, like you have level 1 and then comma something else, and rather than another number, that could be a small graph saying showing how it performs in all metrics. And then maybe you'll see that the package has an excellent code quality. Sorry, it is well tested. It has everything ticking the checkbox, but documentation maybe, and then that you can actually rely on the package, and that it only needs a little help, a little love to get to the tier 1 level. I don't know if that's clear.
So when I'm putting together a robot, I typically just apt install the stuff I need, which then pulls in all its dependencies, right? I mean, like, I'm not looking at, if this type of graph existed, I'm not sure I would be looking at it when I'm going through this process. When would that happen? Is this part of
I mean, if you put blindly any product that you expect to sell, maybe you're doing something wrong in the first place.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think there are two steps to that process that can happen. But first of all, I really like the idea of the report card. I just sent something on the chat because I just discovered right before this meeting that there was a PR targeting Rep 2004 that is overhauling the entire thing. That I didn't take into account when I wrote that document. So I just put something in the chat, which is a link to a table that they made, which is basically defining, saying on, I think, let me have a look just to be sure. Yeah, so the rows are basically the rules, and the columns are the different quality levels, and that basically ticks the boxes of what is needed to be level 1, level 2, level 3, or whatever. So that's already a pretty nice graphical way of seeing where what you need to comply with, how many checkbox you're missing. And so that could be we could use the same type of information to actually make this a graph or a table or something that we would recommend people to put on top of their quality level description. And regarding how would people consume it, I think there may be it's good to have buckets because it just gives you a general idea of okay, all this stuff is rock solid. And then you're well, I heard that, I don't know which SLAM algorithm to use. And I heard that these two perform very well. And maybe you're still going to try the two, but to decide what goes in your final product, it may not only be performance, but also looking at that document for that specific package. And so in that case, it's not just going to be looking at buckets, not necessarily looking at which is in 1.x, but picking between package foo and bar, you're going to say, oh, actually foo is level 2, but has everything but documentation that Jeremy was saying. Well, it's okay. So then I can afford to use it if I'm taking the risk, but I have an easy way to check for that specific package what is missing.
Okay, interesting. So it sounds like we like the quality levels. We just want access to a little more information when it comes down to choosing individual packages. Does that reflect, Jeremy? Does that sound about right?
Yeah, basically the levels as proposed are a very coarse summary, and we propose to have something else aside, which is a slightly finer summary.
Okay. Well, we've reached kind of the. I mean, we could talk about this for a while, but I think we have a lot of good feedback here. I think maybe Mikhail, you and I can go through this and actually turn it into a nice comment, and then maybe ping the room and everyone can review it once more. Does that seem reasonable?
Yeah, just one question about the VDP and like disclosure thing. Because we mentioned it, but I don't think we actually decided anything. Does anyone has an opinion on it's very hard to know what the scope of the VDP is going to be because everything is moving pieces. We have a lot of reps and documents in parallel.
It's true.
But would people be prefer to have a narrower scope of packages that have to comply with the disclosure time and target only a specific set of packages that we can extend over time? Or do we want to have this kind of multiple tier level of packages and say, oh, for you the rule is this, and for you that is in that other category the rule is that, or something else?
That seems like it'd be really hard to maintain over time.
The tier thing?
Yeah. For the VDP, tying it to the VDP. I would almost say, being an open source project, the 90-day disclosure is kind of a best effort. We have to be flexible somewhat in our rules too. So I don't know. I think the tiering thing is just going to overly complicate it, but you kind of just try a blanket for most things.
Well, so that then the corollary to that is, I agree. I want the VDP as simple as possible, but do we want this side of it, the internal process? Do we want to enforce a 30-day deadline on all the quality levels that we want to scope, or do we want to degrade, for level 2, 60 days, even though we're still saying 90 days, which means they might publicly disclose something before a fix is shipped? Is that okay? Or should we have 30 days for everything that we want to support, both level 1 and level 2? Or does that make sense?
I mean, we're working in open source, so how do we, unless we're willing to get volunteers who can understand the embargoed issue and want to fix it in that time period, sometimes, there's going to be things that won't meet the 30-day disclosure. Rather than those tiers, I'd almost just use the CVSS scoring based on the severity of the problem, right? If it's CVSS higher critical, it's 30 days, medium can be 60, rather than invent our own.
Interesting.
For the disclosure part of it. For the other, it makes perfect sense for the one, it makes perfect sense for what it was designed for, but not for the VDP. I'd rather tie it to a known standard that attempts to use some sort of flawed math to develop the scoring. If we just went with CVSS 3.0.
Well, okay, hold on, I'm a little confused. So are you saying that on the VDP it makes sense to have a different deadline depending on the severity score?
No. I'm just saying if there was enough people in this call who thought it was necessary, I would recommend we use CVSS over this scoring, but I don't think we need a different one anyhow. I think we should just have the same rules for a package.
We're basically trying to they're proposing these quality levels, and I think it makes sense to have to be able to use some of these quality levels in our scoping, which means enforcing some security rules on getting into that level. It's not actually a severity. It's more
you're right.
How what level of support do we expect from a security perspective to get into level 1 or level 2?
Hey, I'm going to step back and say I need to think about that more.
Okay, well that's fine. We've got another day or two to actually make this comment, but definitely, give us some thought.
Okay, cool.
So if I can just
please
throw one other thing out there, just as I think about how we would integrate quality levels into the security picture. We haven't talked much about it, but we're looking at the CIS standards. I don't know if it might be a type of thing where we could roll in quality level to the overall quality and set a quality for a benchmark. I don't know if that's an apples and oranges type of thing, but that's another way that we could kind of get quality into the security picture, if you will.
Yeah, I'd
Good
have to
point.
look at. Yeah, I have to look at what they do. That'd be interesting.
Cool. Well, let's continue this one offline because we've gone over. Mikhail, you want to ask Open Robotics for Security Working Group team on the ROS2 org?
Yeah, so the idea in general is that it's been a bit tricky to know who to tag on security-related changes in ROS2 repositories. So most of the time, it's just like someone mentioning either Kyle or Rafin or me. And I think it would be good to just, if everyone agrees with it, to just like ask Open Robotics to have a security working group team in their organization when they make changes to the cores that have the like touch security. And so I'm not sure. I saw Victor added a link to something we discussed in the past. I'm going to let it to Victor because I'm not sure how it ties to teams being mentioned, but it's about like security working group discussions, I think, in general.
I'd agree.
But
Makes
I
sense
guess
to me.
I guess my only question is like, does it make sense to everyone to just request that and have like one way to mention everyone in the working group on the roster repo?
So we chatted, Mikhail and I chatted a little bit about this offline, but I want to bring it up here. I think it's a great idea. We already have the security working group org and teams within it. And ideally we could just use that. The problem is GitHub doesn't support mentioning teams unless one, you're a member of that team, and two, the repository or project in which you're mentioning that team is also a member of the same organization. And so even making this team on the ROS2 org, here, let me just for everyone's so we're all on the same page here. This is where I'm coming from. I think GitHub's implementation of teams there's a big shortcoming there with this, but it sounds like they haven't fixed it yet. So the only way this would actually help us is if a repository, or excuse me, a group admin was the one that mentioned our team. Otherwise, you have to be on the team to mention it, which sort of defeats the purpose of this.
I thought you can mention teams that that were under the org, that like you like any person could file a ticket, and then if there's a team respective to that org, then they could also ping them. But you're saying that the public ping doesn't work.
Yeah, it just sounds. I mean, I would need to play with this, and I know that Mikhail said that the admin thing does work because he can ping people as an admin of an org. He can ping teams of in which he's not a member. But at least according to this question, which is still open, or I mean it's closed, but it hasn't actually been resolved. So Holman works for GitHub. There's a couple of GitHub employees that have like AMAs where people can ask questions, and he outlines the functionality that I've seen so far, where I can't actually mention teams unless I'm a member of them.
Yeah, so I guess the short version is that if we do create a team, get a team created on the roster organization, we may have the drawback that only admins on the roster organization can tag us, which may or may not be acceptable. I mean, that's what we used to do when I was at OSRF. And we would be creating teams for other groups participating in roster repos. And I would believe, except if it changed things, but that most people doing the triaging of tickets at Open Robotics is able to tag any team in the org, which would solve 99% of the scenarios where we need it.
Yeah, you're probably right. You're right. This isn't perfect, but it's better than we've got today. So yeah, I think it's a good idea. And eventually GitHub will fix this. Sounds like they're working on it.
Okay, cool. Let's go to the next topic.
Yes, so just one thing. I know we're over. It's just So Victor, if you want to talk about it in this meeting, or if you want to comment additionally on the document about the links you added, please feel free to do it, because we haven't addressed what you wrote in there yet. I don't know if you can hear us, but...
Yeah, I can. I was just listening. Thank you, Mikhail. Yeah, I'm just, I mean, I think there's a number of things we need to treat in more detail. So I just don't want to disrupt the flow. But I certainly think that opportunity. Yeah, I'm also thinking a lot about how to handle certain things. I'm hesitant about some aspects. I'm a bit doubtful about how to handle VDP related aspects due to a resource problem. I mean, it's not clear to me who is going to be mitigating these flaws at the moment. And I don't know if you guys at Canonical have more information, since you're interfacing directly with Open Robotics. But I guess these bits would be necessary to advance here and there. But yeah, I'll keep myself tuned, and whenever possible, I'll just throw some comments.
Yeah, for sure. I can't speak. I will let Kyle and like Canonical people reply for the mitigation aspect. One of the motivation for this team creation was more for like this kind of ongoing work about like, hey, we're going to change how security lookup or DDS security integration is going to work in ROS 2. So it was more about like feature development on ROS 2 repositories and mitigation. But you make a very good point that mitigation is also like an important thing to assess and see who should be mentioned on fixes and things.
Okay, sorry, then I misunderstood. So just for me to have it clear, so this refers exactly to which pull request or comment, because I know Rafin shared recently a new contribution he has made. Do you mean this one?
Yeah, I can send links. I guess basically we've been working on some things to like ROS 2 is changing how they're doing like creating nodes and stuff. And basically with Rafin, we've been like trying to get up to speed so that ROS 2 keeps working with that. And so these changes, for example, are like not about mitigating issues, but about implementing features so that things keep working. And so that's the kind of thing I was referring to when people make changes that like have an impact on security, that if they want to have feedback from the working group on a change, they can just mention one person. And yeah, I can send a link or two of PRs that fit in that category.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to segue to the next topic.
Yeah. Do you think we'll have time for in the next 5 minutes to go over this your next topic, or should we postpone that till our meeting in 2 weeks and go over the other short topics?
Well, yeah, I guess we're not gonna have time now after 10:30. Did everyone get a chance to skim it through? Any
How do you feel,
questions?
Rafin, if we just give a quick introduction of what we've been doing or changing from past discussion, and then we can
it's basically
iterate
an
offline?
overhaul of adding in the adaptions for the concepts of context. So just restructuring the key store directory to take into account of the concept. We're going kind of tweaking the way that the lookup strategy is. So by default, it's relatively similar as it was, except that the node name itself is not used. So let's say if you have all these nodes in the root namespace, they will look up their key store path in the root of the context folder. If you push a node into the namespace foo, it then looks up under foo. And then we're thinking of like how that interfaces with the launch system. And so maybe you could also add a optional parameter called context in the node element, where you could specify the relative context path or the fully qualified context path. And that's helpful if the context path and the namespace are like mutually orthogonal. We have a couple of like alternatives we kind of were thinking about, and like maybe in this like launch infrastructure, we would have something like a push ROS context, so it's immediately explicit. But given that a lot of other things inherit like namespace pushing, topics, actions, services, having the same kind of paradigm for context, I think kind of makes it more amenable to users to understand. Additionally, if you happen to rename, or if you happen to change the namespace of a node, most likely the permissions that node requires will also change, given like you know, the private namespace of its parameter API, like, or we'll have that demangles to DDS, that would gonna have to be changed. So it's more obvious to the user that then the context path would change. We have some concerns in terms of you know, how this would play out in terms of composable launch files, integrating that with containers. The idea if you have a container that runtime you can load nodes into, so specifying the context of the container and which one that gets inherited. Sort of a migration strategy for RMW implementations on that haven't yet migrated to using context. What do they default to? Basically getting the user in the habit of having to specify a context if they still want to use one context per process that only has one node, kind of thing. There's also, if you're dealing with like multiple namespaces per context, like different nodes inside, what's the best way to maybe surface that from a maintainer or author point of view of like a package that has like a launch file that would be imported. So you know, we're thinking about some of those the ideas and how they may also integrate in terms of making it easier to do static analysis from IDL and tooling. Then there's some more changes in terms of updating the other security docs, the DDS security doc and the access control policy schema to accompany these changes.
So let me jump in and,
yeah.
and this is maybe a good spot to break. We'll repick this up as the first thing we talk about on the next meeting.
Yep.
Cool. Okay. And Mikhail, is it cool if we do?
Let's skip the next one. Totally fine.
Okay, cool. I just moved up to the next one. So Victor.
Well, I think we can summarize both by please look at those links.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about please look at the links before the next meeting?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Victor, tell us about your CS4R.
Sure. Thank you, Joe. So and by the way, sorry, Mikhail and Rafin, I didn't have time to review this. I actually didn't have time, but anyhow, really shortly, 1 minute. So we are preparing this. Actually, it's my colleague Endika who should announce it soon. He's coordinated everything. This cybersecurity for robotics workshops as part of the European Robotics Forum, which is happening next week, actually in the south of Spain. So if there's any of you who is interested in participating, or we have actually, I think in the second session, still some spots, we could probably maybe also fit a contribution, though it's very, very late, but this happened kind of like late minute. So so I'm sorry we didn't essentially come here and offer it before. We ourselves also got involved very late. But anyhow, if anyone is interested, reach out. Happy to share a few more bits. And if not, any help disseminating this would be very appreciated. I think it's been shared in this course and some robotics mailing lists. But other than that, it's going to be essentially gathering a number of industry partners who are interested in security. I'm going to try to record. Yeah, that's right, Kyle. That's actually one of the collaborators, and that's Ulrich, I think. And he was trying to disseminate it, but we were just not quite ready on our end. So now we are, and as I was saying, we will try to get the slides and the videos. So the organization is not being very helpful. with that. So we'll try to do it kind of like manually, bringing ourselves some equipment. So hopefully it'll be available for anyone that's interested. That's it.
Cool. That sounds great. Yeah. Well, definitely. If you want to add, we already have the links there. Cool. We'll look at it. This is awesome. Thanks for putting that meeting together. So everybody, sorry, ran over a little bit this time. We moved those other 2 topics up to the beginning of the next meeting, and we'll share the video and the notes and everything. And thanks for getting on the call, everybody. Have a great day.
Sounds good. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks everybody.
And Victor, if you happen to have a bit more information, more details on like what these sessions are about and like everything, if you can drop us something either on Matrix or Discourse, just because we were discussing it like when we saw the message come in, but we were like, from the program, it was very hard to know what it was about and who was part of it and everything.
Sure, I will drop what I know in Matrix and ask actually my colleague who is in charge of organizing this just to jump in and answer any questions. Will do.
Awesome, thank you. All right, everyone.
Awesome, thanks.
Have a good day.
All right, bye-bye, everyone.
See you guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.